All right, so if you don't get the reference, I'll explain. This is my mission statement. I kind of planned on making it before, like as my first video, but I was too, I don't know, motivated to post the first video. So I ended up just, posting the first video, and now I'm going back and making a mission statement. I've wanted to post some stuff on YouTube for a while, several years, right? Like I have interests. We all do. I plan on eventually making I'll say a third channel for pop culture stuff, books, movies, TV shows that I want to talk about, and hopefully can kind of, at the very least, give people the tools to decide whether or not it's something they want to watch, right? Like I don't necessarily care if I convince somebody to watch it, but there's a lot of really good stuff out there that it feels to me like people aren't aware of. And so it's like, hey, you should be aware of it. And if it sounds like something you want to watch, great, watch it. If not, so be it. I plan on making a second channel at some point for video games. There's going to be some overlap, but there's one I want to make a second channel just specifically for like RPGs specifically. Because I don't just want to talk about why I like them and try and give people the tools to decide whether or not it sounds like something they want to check out also, but I do want to do some background stuff, some like getting into history or context and doing tips, tricks, hints, Easter eggs, tutorials, and walkthroughs. I specifically want to do Baldur's Gate. I would say especially Baldur's Gate 2, although really 1 and 2. And so a walkthrough of Baldur's Gate 2, it's going to be, it might be like 24 videos. So I don't want to just put all that on my like third pop culture channel. So I'm probably going to eventually have 3 different channels. If I follow through, which who knows, I might get lazy or lose my password or something. But for now, that's my plan. As far as this channel, I don't plan on having it just be, the Montreal Canadiens, Washington Capitals round 1 series. I don't think I plan on having it just be this playoffs or even just the Capitals specifically. I don't think I even plan on having it being just hockey. There's definitely sports stuff I want to talk about. Like I grew up a basketball fan, being a fan of the Chicago Bulls. Scottie Pippen's my favorite player of all time. I think Michael Jordan's the GOAT, obviously. It's pretty obvious he's the GOAT. But a lot of LeBron fans who are too young to have, been there for the Jordan experience like to push back on that. And I actually do think there's still stuff to be said to make that case. I think there's certain things that I've never heard people kind of mention, nuanced arguments that, well, I never kind of hear people mention the Jordan versus LeBron debate. You hear the same stuff over and over again, and it's always a lot of it's the low hanging fruit. It's not the nuanced stuff that I think makes a difference. And also, as a Scottie Pippen fan, it's just frustrating because these the LeBron fans, the people who won. I don't want it's not like I hate LeBron, so I don't it's not necessarily like you can be a fan of both. But when I say LeBron fans in this context, I'm talking about people who think LeBron's the GOAT, obviously, not just people who are fans in a general sense. But these people they're trying to pump Scottie up in order to use him as a weapon against Jordan, which kind of sucks. And they weren't there for it. They don't know who Scottie is as a player, and so they're not even doing a good job of explaining why he was so great. And I think that sucks. And I want to, I'll probably at some point do a video about Pippen. And of course, also, Jordan, the people who are pushing back against the LeBron fans who are saying Jordan's the GOAT, they oftentimes will like tear down Pippen in a way that it's like, no, it's they're both great players. I have Pippen as the 18th greatest player all time. They're both great. Their greatness should not detract from each other. I also want to talk about, honestly, like Tim Tebow. Like, that might seem weird or something you don't want to hear about, but like it's crazy to me that the Broncos had Kyle Orton, who was a solid quarterback. Like he wasn't, great. He wasn't elite. He wasn't a franchise, but he was a solid quarterback. If you had a good roster, Or if you had a roster that you didn't know how good it was, like he's the perfect, hey, he'll show you exactly how good your roster is. He will not really elevate much, but he's also not going to detract much. He was a solid quarterback. And they replaced him with Tim Tebow, who looked to me like the worst quarterback I have ever seen throw a pass in the NFL. And yet they went 2-6 with Orton and 6-2 with Tebow. And that makes no sense. And it's crazy to me that everybody's just content being like, that was weird, and moving on. It's crazy to me that people don't want to talk about how weird it was, because it makes no sense. And it makes me wonder, like, do I understand football at all? If you can replace a solid quarterback with the worst quarterback ever and just get better and just win, go from a non-playoff team to a playoff team. How does that happen? So anyway, I think this channel is at some point or another going to expand beyond not just hockey, not just the Capitals, not just hockey, but sports. But for now, the next few videos, I'm going to be, again, I only intend to explore Game 1 and Game 2. It feels like that's kind of when Montreal, the Canadian fans are really pointing to Game 1 and 2 as believing that the Caps have been dirty and cheap and gotten away with a lot. And I feel like that's kind of where I need to push back the hardest. I'm not trying to make the case that the Canadians are cheap or dirty. I do think Josh Anderson is. I don't believe the team as a collective is. But I'm just trying to push back to show, number one, that neither of the Capitals. It's, both teams have kind of, other than what Anderson has done, at least through Game 1 and 2. Again, I didn't see 3. I've heard some stuff, but I didn't see it. But in Game 1 and 2, other than what Anderson did, whatever, 3 or 4 of his things, depending on how you look at it, that were dirty, cheap, both. But everything else was just typical playoff hockey stuff. Some cross-checking back and forth, big hits, a trip or a high stick or whatever that wasn't intentional. It's just a penalty. Sometimes the refs got it, sometimes they didn't. But to try and Canadian fans attempt to portray the Capitals as cheap and dirty in a way that the Canadians aren't is just insane to me. And I feel like I need to push back on that and show video evidence that they're making stuff up, or at least severely mischaracterizing everything that's happened through Game 1 and 2. But the other point is, again, to push back and say, hey, I think the Capitals should have had more power plays through 2 games, and the Canadians did. So this belief that the refs are in the Caps' pockets is laughable. As I already pointed out in the first video covering Game 1 that I thought power play should have been, again, realistically, I would expect the Caps to have 5. I think the Canadians should have had 2. Again, maybe you want to argue 3, if depending on how you feel about the incidental contact between Leonard and the Canadian player, if you honestly think that was interference. And then certainly the Alexiev cross-checking scrum, which I didn't plan on showing, or I didn't show it in my first video. I didn't plan on showing it because I didn't think I needed to. I didn't think I needed to push back against that, because they're right. Alexiev did cross-check him. And I'm not trying to argue that he didn't, or that it was, a good no call. I just wanted to show that trying to frame that as somehow indicative of how the series has gone is a lie. But then at the end of the video, I started talking about how many penalties each team should have, and I realized, I characterized that scrum, that incident, as having gone back and forth. So I would expect that to be a 4-on-4. And the refs, instead of calling both, got neither. Which I think, again, ultimately same difference, so that it's the right call. But then, in talking about it, I realized I should have shown that so that the viewer could make their own decision. So I plan on doing a second part to Game 1, so I can show that. And there's a couple other little things that I forgot that, again, it has nothing to do with, cheap or dirty or bad penalty, the wrong penalty calls or whatever, but just to kind of there's some other little things I want to point out. Spoiler alert. It was Thompson kept trying to play the puck. Thompson would try to play the puck so the Caps could, instead of having a face-off, a defense's zone face-off, they could try and go on the attack. They would have possession, and they could try and go on the attack. And the ref would blow the whistle. And then Thompson talked to the ref a couple times, like, hey, I'm trying to play it. Don't blow the whistle so quickly. And they kept blowing the whistle quickly. And they, multiple times, he just kept trying to play the puck, and they wouldn't let him. And again, it's not like, I'm so mad as a Caps fan necessarily, but, if you're a Canadian fan trying to say, hey, the refs are in the Capitals' pockets, then why wouldn't they listen to Thompson and let him play the puck? Like, that's, ultimately a kind of little thing, but it really should be pretty effective at refuting the Canadians' false narrative that somehow they're not getting any calls, or that, the refs are bending the game towards the Capitals as if the NHL wants Washington to win this series for some reason. Washington's winning this. I would argue Washington's winning the series because they have the edge in size, speed, and skill. We're the 1 seed, they're the 8 seed. What do they expect? So anyway, I'm going to just have a second part to the Game 1 video. And I'm going to have a Game 2 video, as I said. And again, I don't know if I'll cover... I don't expect to cover Game 3. We'll see. I don't think I have to cover Game 4. Again, there was that incident between... Again, Wilson trucked Carrier. It seems to me like most nonpartisan fans agree that was a legal hit. It's Tom Wilson. If you had an eyelash out of place, people would love to call him dirty. So the fact that so many people seem to think it was the right call, or the right no call, I'm guessing people understand it was a legal hit. There was incidental contact between Ovechkin and Evans that was called interference. And, if it was a check, it would have been a headshot, right? Like the contact was between Ovechkin's shoulder and Evans's head, but that was not a check. It was incidental contact. Ovechkin was skating to an area of the ice, and Evans was curled into him, and they collided. It was called a penalty, but I don't think it should have been. So I might need to cover that. But I haven't seen much outcry about that. Again, I've seen some Canadian fans trying to argue that Ovechkin should be suspended, right? That should have been a 5-minute major because of a headshot, that he should be suspended because of the headshot. But I haven't seen too much discourse on it, and the fact that there's not a lot of discourse about it makes me think that most people, again, understand it was incidental contact. I'm guessing. So, like I say, I expect that my next 2 videos will be Game 2, which should come out. Honestly, I plan on posting it probably just a couple. I'm going to go to the gym after this, and then when I come back, probably shower, eat, whatever, I might post, and then I might record Game 2 and then post it, I don't know, 4-6 hours after this. It might not be until tomorrow, but Game 2 should come out within the next day, and then the second part to Game 1 should come out within another day or 2 of that at the latest. And then after that, we'll see. Again, I plan on not returning to this series anymore. Hopefully my Caps can close out in Game 5, and then I never have to worry about it anymore. But, if we don't, or if, outcry, if something makes me think that I need to push back against whatever, the Wilson hit, if I think I need to show that, if I think I need to show the incidental contact between Ovechkin and Evans, then I might at some point make a video about those games. But for now, my expectation is I'll just cover Game 2, a second part to Game 1, and then I'll just kind of move on. I'll do other hockey stuff, just general stuff, probably talking about, players I like or whatever, other sports stuff. But I think I'll be done with this series. And as far as I'm aware, I don't plan on covering anything about the playoffs specifically beyond that. I don't know that I have all that much to say. So that's my plan for this channel moving forward, for as it stands right now, I guess.